I want to compare what Hugo Chavez is doing and compare to what we're doing. If we look at Hugo Chavez, he's been a busy guy. First of all, Chavez has a decline in poll numbers, and he's got elections to win this year. Obama, decline in poll numbers and elections to win. Okay. Here's what Chavez did over the weekend. He announced a major currency deflation late Friday to shore up government finances and stimulate the economic growth before the key elections this year. Translation, what he's decided to do is print more money to be able to make the government let it spend more money to help create jobs for the election. Now let's take a look at some of the other things that Hugo Chavez has done up until this point. Chavez, in May of 2007, he took control of oil projects part owned by foreign private companies. So in other words, big oil is evil. Let's take them over and we'll run them as a government. Then, in 2007, Radio Caracas Television, the country's oldest private network and its most watched, goes off the air after Chavez refuses to renew its broadcasting license. He tells the channel that you're just doing all kinds of moral damage and backed the coup against him in 2002. Got it? Fairness doctrine, what he's done is the fairness doctrine times 100. Chavez then begins a campaign of threats and fines and intimidation against the country's only remaining opposition TV station, Globovision. July 31st, he announces also the nationalization of Banco Santander, it's a bank, the local subsidiary of Banco de Venezuela. He takes the banks, bails them out. And then on November 20th, they take over 4 different banks. Got it? Hugo Chavez, then his next move is silence and discredit his critics. In June of 2009, police raided the home of Globovision's president and ordered the station to pay $2.3 million for giving free airtime to anti-government groups during the 2002 oil strike. Hit them with big fines. Hit them with big fines that go right to the government. Got it? That's what he's done. By the way, August of this year, Chavez began to shut down the radio stations, 34 radio stations, to silence their dissent as well. Now, completely unrelated, let me show you what has happened this past year here in the United States of America. Under Barack Obama, completely unrelated to any of this. Remember, Chavez nationalized big oil, shuts down the country's most watched television network, threatened and fined and intimidated the other opposing station, shut down 34 radio stations, took over the banks, and then decided he was going to silence his critics. Completely unrelated to the past year here in America. Chavez, first thing he did, grab big oil. Let me show you what Maxine Waters said about big oil. Look at this.
That's what this liberal would be all about. This liberal will be all about socializing. Would be about.
Yeah. Taking over?
Basically.
No. Basically.
Taking over.
Taking over. And what?
And the government running all of your companies.
That is so weird. Completely unrelated, though. Now, Chavez then intimidated, shut down, or fined any media critical of his policies. Meanwhile, Obama's FCC diversity czar, Mark Lloyd, said this.
In Venezuela, Chavez really had an incredible revolution. Democratic revolution.
Yes.
To begin to put in place things that were going to have an impact on the people of Venezuela.
Yes. So it was an incredible revolution. That's Mark Lloyd there. But what did he do? I mean, what did he say about the fairness doctrine?
What we're really saying is that the fairness doctrine's not enough. And
Fairness doctrine times 100. That is weird, because that's what we're doing here. And according to Mark Lloyd, commercial broadcast owners who don't comply with these regulations will be forced to pay a fine. That's what they were. The proceeds would go directly to support local, regional, and national public broadcasting, PBS, funded by your tax dollars, and soon fines on private broadcast companies. Lloyd estimates that the fines would net between $100 million and $250 million for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which in turn, according to Lloyd and his colleagues, would cover controversial and political issues in a fair and balanced manner. Oh, you two! It's great. Then Chavez took over the Venezuelan banks. In America, completely unrelated, no pattern here, Barack Obama and the U.S. government executed a bailout of some of America's largest banks. And then the federal government, which now owns 35% of Bank of America's pro forma tangible equity, said, hey, this is sweet. We got this going on. But hey, on December 14th, Obama said this about our banking situation.
With the help of the American government and the American taxpayer, our banks now have a greater obligation to the goal of a wider recovery, a more stable system, and more broadly shared prosperity.
Shared prosperity. That's why George Washington's like, bleh. Chavez worked overtime to silence his critics. Well, on June 16th of last year, Obama mentioned his alleged opposition.
I've got one television station that is entirely devoted to attacking my administration.
Gosh.
I mean, that's a pretty...
I assume you're talking about Fox.
Well, that's a pretty big megaphone.
Yes, it is. And when the White House said Fox isn't a news organization, President Obama had this to say.
If media is operating basically as a talk radio format, then that's one thing, and if it's operating as a news outlet, then that's another. But it's not something I'm losing a lot of sleep over.
No, he's not, and neither is Hugo Chavez. Now, in again, completely unrelated, big oil, fairness doctrine times 100, bank bailout, silencing the critics in the media. What a coincidence. Now Chavez is devaluing the Venezuelan currency so he can stimulate the economy and create jobs because his poll numbers are in decline and he has elections to win. I've been telling you this since George W. Bush was in office. This president and the last president devalued our dollar. What happened in Venezuela is going to happen here if we don't stop spending money and we don't get off the Marxist bandwagon here. But more importantly, if you're going to control people, if you're really going to control them, how do you make them dependent? How do you make it like heroin? What's the best way to control people? Sure, you can change the radio stations or the TV. You can control their energy supplies, or you can even make them go to you. If you want a new business or you need a loan, go to the government for it. But the most effective way to become the slave master and make them come to you is to make them come to you for employment. How could you ever, if you're the president, lose your job if the voter understands that if I vote for the competitor who wants to reduce the size of government, that means my job goes away. I'll lose my job. The real power grab is getting them into your employ. Let me show you a chart now that I think you'll find stunning. This is from Seeking Alpha in the Department of Labor. You ready for this? This is good producing versus government payrolls. The blue will be goods producing. Government is in red. Okay, here we go. Payrolls from 1939. This shows how the public sector, the government sector, is steadily growing. And private sector growing as well. It has some fits and starts, but it keeps going up. The government line is steadily growing. And see how they've closed the gap slowly but surely. Goods producing has bounced around and then the peak. But then what happened here? Goods producing falls off a cliff. Towards the end of 2007, there were more government jobs than producing jobs in this country. Before, that wasn't the case, and look at this. It's not lost on me, by the way, that most of this happened during George W. Bush. Again, I told you before, George W. Bush was a progressive administration as well. This has been coming for a very long time. Now, under Obama, what's going to happen? We used to make goods in this country. Now we make consumers, and we're starting to make government slaves. We buy stuff from other countries. And at this rate, we're going to be doing it on government salaries. Government salaries. Where does the government get the money to pay that salary? Oh, I know. The taxpayer. But if the taxpayer is losing his job, then the government salary is coming from taxes on taxpayer money. This is weird because it doesn't make sense to me. Well, it makes as much sense as if like a really hungry man decided, I'm going to start eating my own feet. Eventually, you're going to run out of food. Know what I'm saying? This is a problem.
Welcome to